Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I have updates for you guys about Donald Trump's Iran war. So, we're almost certainly sending in ground troops, although Donald Trump now is talking about how, oh, I might just pull out now. I might just end this whole thing, let everybody out that way, just deal with it, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I have those details for you, including a report about why that move will result in complete disaster, meaning the ground troops, or pulling out and just walking away. And this is according to a strong Trump ally as well. I also have more news about the economic fallout of this illegal attack. And the war has already escalated in multiple ways over the past few days. Donald Trump's propagandist, Kim Jong Levitt, was confronted about Donald Trump's Truth Social post, where he was floating the idea of, oh, I might just go commit some war crimes. So, actually, let's start there. Take a look at what she had to say. This was her response. Just listen.
Morning about his threat that on leaving Iran, he said we might be blowing up and completely obliterating all of their electric generating plants, oil wells, Harg Island, and possibly all desalinization plants. Under international law, striking civilian infrastructure like that is generally prohibited. Why is the president threatening what would amount to potentially a war crime with the U.S. military? And how do you square that with the administration repeatedly saying that the U.S. does not target civilians?
Look, the president has made it quite clear to the Iranian regime at this moment in time, as evidenced by the statement that you just read, that their best move is to make a deal, or else the United States Armed Forces has capabilities beyond their wildest imagination, and the president is not afraid to use them. That's not what I said, Garrett. And you're saying the word potential for a reason, because I'm sure some experts are telling you that in your ear to try to ask me that question. Of course, this administration and the United States Armed Forces will always act within the confines of the law. But with respect to achieving the full objectives of Operation Epic Fury, President Trump is going to move forward unabated, and he expects the Iranian regime to make a deal with the administration.
To that end, which of those objectives would destroying a desalinization plant most help?
Haley, go ahead.
So that is the word salad and the frustrated look of a press secretary who knows she's lying. She is lying, and she's working for a lying sociopath, and she has no legitimate answers, right? I mean, the president you work for just said he might commit war crimes. What is your answer? Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, we're always going to do things the right way, except for when we go and we murder little girls. And then speaking of lying sociopaths, last Friday, Israel struck several industrial and nuclear sites in Iran. So then Iran retaliated. They hit more sites in Israel, and they threatened to target U.S. and Israeli universities in the Middle East. Iran also hit an air base in Saudi Arabia on Friday of last week. Here's an article about that. So, according to the Wall Street Journal, which this was their article, there were a total of 12 U.S. troops that were injured. 2 of them suffered serious injuries. The other 10 had concussions. And the Trump regime tried to downplay this. They tried to make it out like, oh, this wasn't really a big deal. There wasn't much damage to our planes. Really? Okay, well, check this out. This is one of the planes that they damaged. This is a photo of one of the planes that they hit on this airbase. This is one of only 17 American spy planes that exist that have these very unique capabilities to monitor threats. So that's great, right? We could afford 1 out of 17, right? And then the New York Times reported that an Iranian petrochemical facility was targeted, and this was in a joint U.S.-Israel airstrike. Well, now things got ratcheted up because the Houthis are now directly involved in this war. So, I mean, this just keeps growing by the minute. So the Houthis launched 2 ballistic missiles at Israeli military sites. Now, Israel said that they didn't have any deaths. One of the missiles they intercepted, the other one hit a target, but I guess there was nobody in the building, so no one was hurt. At least that's what they're telling us. And then multiple news outlets are also reporting that a U.S. ground invasion is pretty much all but certain. So here's an article about that. As you can see here, it says Pentagon prepares for weeks of ground operations in Iran. U.S. Central Command confirmed they had 3 ships that were on the way that have now arrived in the Middle East. They are carrying somewhere upwards of 4,500 sailors and Marines. And this is in addition to the deployment of the thousands of soldiers that I had mentioned previously from the 82nd Airborne Division. And the Wall Street Journal reported that the Defense Department is now considering sending another 10,000 troops to the region. So Donald Trump can say, oh, yeah, I think we're just going to stop. I think we're just going to walk away. So what is all of this? Why are we wasting all of this money? We have accomplished nothing. Nothing. We took out the Ayatollah. Okay, great. Well, now his son is in charge. His son, who is pissed off for good reason. I mean, we killed his wife, I believe his child, his father, a bunch of his other family. And he is well known to be way more hardline than his father was. So, anyway, all of this just directly contradicts comments that the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, had made last Friday. He was at an event in France and he was trying to calm their nerves and say, like, oh, no, it's not as bad as you think, blah, blah, blah. And he told a bunch of our allies that this isn't going to be a, quote, prolonged conflict. And then Rubio also falsely claimed that the U.S., quote, can achieve all of our objectives without ground troops. So what is going on here? Like, is he being left out of the discussions, or is he lying, or like, what is it? Are they just trying to keep the Iranians guessing? So in any case, Iranian officials warned that U.S. troops would be, quote, set on fire if they attempt a ground invasion. That's great. And then here's why this isn't an empty threat, like them setting our troops on fire. It was just reported by The Guardian that the U.S. has only taken out a fraction of Iran's missiles. So here's the article that they just published. The Guardian spoke with 5 people who are familiar with the United States intelligence. And they said that the U.S. has only destroyed about a third. So a third of the missiles and drones in Iran. And then they said there's another third that's likely damaged, or it's possibly buried underground, in the tunnels and the bunkers that we hit with bunker bombs. Now, remember, the terrain in Iran is not like other countries. Okay. Our troops are going to have a very hard time getting in, and then an even harder time getting out without, falling victim to a trap that I'm sure they've already laid for our troops, right? I mean, they've had a month now to lay all kinds of traps for them. And this is why that last weekend, I don't know if you guys know, but there was a CPAC conference. So it's the Conservative Political Action Conference that they hold every year. There was a Trump humper there, Erik Prince, guy just is MAGA to the core. Even he was saying that this is a very bad idea, that putting troops on the ground in Israel or in Iran is a bad idea, and that he thought that the entire war was a bad idea. So take a look at this.
Counseled as loud as possible against doing this in the first place. We face a extremely difficult challenge. The Iranians learned their lesson from what happened to Iraq. Decapitation of the leadership structure of the Iraqi army. The Iranians have done the exact same thing. There's 31 different military districts. All clear direction given to those 31 commanders is to continue to wage war against whoever they can with whatever they can. The only person that can countermand that order is the supreme leader. And we've killed the supreme leader now, his father, his wife, his sister, other family members in an ancient society. In an ancient society that understands blood oath. So I don't share the optimism of the administration that there's going to be a peaceful stop to this. They will burn it down, and my real concern is that if they try to put boots on the ground, force the Straits of Hormuz, you will see imagery of burning American warships in the next couple of weeks. And I don't think people are really prepared for that. The U.S. military, for 2 years, tried to bomb the hell out of the Houthis and to open the Red Sea and the Bab el-Mandab, and it didn't work. And to think that we're going to force that on the IRGC that's prepared for this moment for the last 46 years, I am extremely concerned. So look, Iran doesn't have an Independence Day because they've not really been conquered since Alexander the Great.
So there you go. I mean, that, like I said, that guy is as MAGA gets. He is a tried and true Trump supporter. And he is saying this is a huge mistake. This was a huge mistake. Going in with ground troops is an even bigger mistake. And I want you guys to remember those people in that audience who were clapping. I want you to remember, if or when, God forbid, there is a terrorist attack here in the United States, remember that those people clapped, because this isn't going to be like 9/11. Okay. I want MAGA to understand that. I want the cult members to understand that. After 9/11, we all came together. We all felt a sense of U.S. pride, camaraderie. We all, just we're like one. That's not the case. That's not what's going to go down. If God forbid, something happens here in the United States, we will all know who to blame for any lives that are lost. Okay. It's all of the dumbasses in that audience and around the country, everyone like them, cheering this on. A needless war, a war of choice that we absolutely had no reason to start. They posed no danger to us, no threat to us. They did not have nukes. Donald Trump's own people said it was going to be at least 10 years before they had the possibility of being able to create nuclear weapons. They had a better deal on the table than what we're looking at right now. And instead, we bombed them. Instead, we blew up their leadership, the one who said we're not going to create nuclear wars or nuclear bombs, issued a fatwa against it. And we took him out and killed a bunch of little girls in their country. So remember those morons. Remember the red hat wearing, the dumb fuck finder wearing people who cheered this on in that audience, because it will be their fault if any Americans die. Anyway, and speaking of dumbasses, Pete Hegseth keeps invoking religion and quoting the Bible and Bible verses to justify this war and killing Iranians. Remember, this is the guy who just about a week or so ago said, oh, the Iranians, they are religious fanatics. They spend all of their money on weapons instead of taking care of their citizens. Okay, here's what Hegseth said at a prayer service this past week. He said, quote, "Let every round find its mark against the enemies of righteousness and our great nation. Give them wisdom in every decision and overwhelming violence of action against those who deserve no mercy." So, yeah, remind me again, Pete, who's the religious zealot? Who's the religious freak? Anyway, and then a retired general told the Washington Post that he is hearing from dozens of active duty chaplains who are saying that if they try to voice their concerns against this, they're now being sidelined and they're being punished by Hegseth. So here's an article about this. So we have a bunch of Christian nationalist freaks in charge of our government. What could possibly go wrong, right? Other than everything. So also, a guy named Christopher Armitage. He is an Air Force veteran. He's a disaster preparedness expert. He recently wrote on his Substack newsletter that the US is in danger of collapsing within 6 months. He said, if this war continues, we are going to be absolutely annihilated. And here's why, because he pointed out that nearly 50 million Americans are already food insecure. And with the Strait of Hormuz being closed, as I've mentioned before, I'm sure you guys all know, we have the reduced supply of fertilizer on top of the gas that you need to cook, you need to heat your homes. So Armitage said that farmers are, because of this lack of fertilizer or the increased price, they're going to have to jack up their prices, or they have to just forego planting certain crops because this is planting month. March is planting month. He said, once you get past this window, it's too late. It's not like, oh, I can just plant next month if we get fertilizer. No, you have to plant it this month. So if they don't have the fertilizer for certain crops that need it, they just have to forego that certain crop. And within 1 week of this war starting, fertilizer went from $475 per metric ton to $683 a metric ton. So a 44% increase. So some farmers are like, yeah, I can't afford that. I just can't do it. So I'll just have to plant something else. I guess we won't have those crops this year. And then others are going to have to pass on the increased cost to consumers. Like if they could afford the upfront cost, they're going to pass that on to buyers. And then we're also going to have a shortage on certain crops. So that's going to artificially boost the price because of supply and demand, right? If we don't have enough, let's say corn, then the price of corn goes up. So anyway, Armitage also cited examples of civil wars that happened in other countries because citizens couldn't afford to eat and feed their families. And he said the likelihood of a civil war here depends on how the government responds. That's what the breaking point was in other countries. He pointed out too that Donald Trump has cut food assistance, right? He cut back on SNAP benefits last year. And then they stopped tracking how many families, how many Americans are living with food insecurity. So we won't even know who's really in trouble. I mean, we couldn't possibly be in less capable hands. And I mean, that's just a part of it. Like, that is not the only issue that we're facing here in the US. Forbes reported that the odds are ticking up that the Fed is going to have to increase interest rates soon. So here's an article on that. As of now, the Fed said, no, we're going to hold things steady. We don't see the need right now. But, if this goes on much longer, yeah, I mean, inflation is just shooting through the roof. Gas prices today, the average national national average gas price was over $4 a gallon. So, I mean, I'm seeing pictures of here in California of $7 and $8 a gallon gas prices. And stock futures had fallen again. Now they're back up again because Donald Trump now, of course, is playing his games. Oh, we're going to walk away. I'm going to end it, blah, blah, blah. They're all buying into it again. Oil prices are still up, though. I mean, it's not going to go down anytime soon. CNBC had reported earlier this week, I think it was just yesterday or Sunday, that stock futures like crude was up to $116 a barrel. Brent crude, that was the price. Well, now today it's over 118. And then the West Texas Intermediate futures, that came down a little bit. It was 103 as of, I think it was Sunday in, the future stock trades. Now it's like 101, but over 100. I mean, it's just horrific. And Market Watch had reported last Friday that investors are now shying away from U.S. Treasury bonds, which this is not a good sign. On Friday, they said that the U.S. experienced the weakest Treasury auction in over 3 years. And in another report, they said even high-income Americans are now starting to freak out. They're now starting to become pessimistic about the U.S. economy. Honestly, that might be the only thing that saves us, guys, right? I mean, when wealthy Americans start to feel pain, then our government starts to take notice. When the oligarchs start to lose money, then they start to make changes, right? So if they start complaining, they'll be listened to. Someone will hear what they have to say, unlike the rest of us schmucks, us lowly average Americans. Anyway, I will let you know when I hear more, guys. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. Please like, please share, and subscribe. Please donate if you can. Love you all. Take care. Talk with you soon.